On Saturday, April 5, millions will be protesting nationwide. There's thousands of organized protests happening in dozens of cities in every state. There's big protests happening at each state capital and at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Now, many organizations and grassroots movements are coming together, joining hands, and protesting together. Protesting against Donald Trump, his administration, and Elon Musk. And I'll get into what these protests are really about, but first I want to say, this may become the largest day of protest in modern American history, or at least in the last 40 years. Millions of people are ready to protest. However, there's quite a bit of controversy. There's pushback coming from many groups, and I'm not even just talking about conservatives or Trump supporters. There's major pushback coming from progressives. And there's pushback coming from Black Americans who are liberal and progressive. I'll get to the controversy in a minute. You may hear names such as Hands Off 2025, 5051. These are names of grassroots protest movements. 5051 means 50 states, 50 protests, one day. According to their website, they are protesting the illegal actions of the Trump administration and its plutocratic allies. They say that they are standing up to democracy. On the Hands Off 2025 website, it says they are a nationwide mobilization to stop the most brazen power grab in modern history. Trump, Musk, and their billionaire cronies are orchestrating an all-out assault on our government, our economy, and our basic rights, enabled by Congress every step of the way. They want to strip America for parts, shutting Social Security offices, firing essential workers, eliminating consumer protections, and gutting Medicaid, all to bankroll their billionaire tax scam. They're handing over our tax dollars, our public services, and our democracy to the ultra-rich. Now that last part is on point, for sure. So this is what these groups say that they are protesting. Now to the controversy. I'll start with progressives in general, and why many on the left are pushing back against what these protests claim to be doing. And then after, I'll explain what's going on with Black and African Americans and why they're telling other Black and African Americans to stay home, to not get involved on this day of protesting whatsoever. Here's why some progressives are pushing back against these protests. On the face, protesting this administration merely as a force of opposition is fine. Actually, it's good, and more people should be doing it. But most of the people who partake in these protests are trying to protect the status quo. It's believed that most of these protesters are some form of Democratic Party partisan liberal. And when I say status quo, I mean, at least 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. There's a massive imbalance in the concentration of wealth and ownership in this country. Long before Trump took office, the ultra wealthy had rigged systems in their favor, which has made housing and healthcare and everything unaffordable. And this has been the status quo. This has been the reality in the US for decades. So the argument is these protests don't go far enough. Many on the left think that these protests are just protecting what we had before. And maybe it's providing opposition to the current administration, but it's not really advocating for change, just to stop what Trump is doing. To progressives, protecting the status quo is bad. In one of my previous videos, I made the argument that we need to be able to compartmentalize the two movements that are going on. So one movement is the opposition side of things, the calling out of all the horrible things that the Trump administration is doing. And the other side of the coin, the other movement, is advocating for progressive policies and crafting a narrative that people can get behind to ensure that we win in 2026 and 2028. Now, some progressives are saying that we need to be doing both things at the same time. Opposing this administration and then crafting a narrative that's centered around our progressive policies, such as Medicare for all. Some progressives are saying that these protests don't include advocating for left-wing policies. Now, and that it means that they're just trying to protect what we had before Trump took office, the status quo, which has been around for decades and is bad, right? These protests are all about protecting what's left of the social safety net. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the Department of Education, and much, much more. Now, Trump and Elon have fired hundreds of thousands of government employees. The point is, all of those things, the firing of employees, the cutting of social safety net programs, all of those things were done illegally. Congress controls the power of the purse. I'm sure that you've heard this before. When a spending bill gets passed through Congress and the president signs it, it's done. That's it. The allocation of that money is finalized. Trump or Elon, they can't cut funding on the back end on a whim whenever they feel like it. It's unconstitutional. If you want to do that, you have to pass a spending bill through Congress to have those programs either cut or dismantled altogether. The MAGA media machine has done a great job at convincing unsuspecting Trump supporters that doing these illegal things somehow is good for the country. The people who are pushing back against these protests in the name of leftism or progressivism are not able to compartmentalize the two movements, are not able to separate an opposition and an advocacy of left-wing policies. And I can't blame them for that. You know, in a perfect world, in a perfect political landscape, we'd have a coalition that is doing both things, that is protesting, opposing this administration and against all of the illegal things that they're doing, but also at the same time, at these rallies, at these protests, advocating for Medicare for all, advocating for a Green New Deal, advocating for a wealth tax, advocating for universal basic income, advocating for, and I can go on and on with all, left-wing policy ideas. A lot of progressives, especially ones who have a large voice, progressives who have a large following, are saying these things. I completely understand where they're coming from too. I get it. Like, we want left-wing policies to be at the forefront of our narrative alongside the opposition. But like I said before in other videos, the left should be joining hands with liberals and with moderates, centrists, whatever you want to call them, in the opposition side of things. We should be going to these protests with them. We should be going on social media, following these movement accounts who are just opposing, right? These people are not out there with Medicare for all signs. They're not out there saying we need a Green New Deal. These are the people that are saying, get your hands off my Social Security, get your hands off of my Medicare, stuff like that. My point here is that we shouldn't be trying to make the opposition weaker just because the other side of the coin of, correcting the narrative around left-wing policies, just because that isn't being broadcasted by these moderate liberals, right? So that was a brief summary of why some progressives are pushing back against these protests. Now, here's why many Black and African Americans who are liberal or progressive are specifically pushing back against these protests. Popular Black influencers on TikTok and Twitter have been telling other Black people for weeks to not go to these April 5 protests for a few reasons. Some of them are saying, we already protested on November 5th by voting for Kamala Harris. Y'all broke it. Go fix it now. A lot of people saying it's not their fight. This is a tweet from a popular Black progressive content creator. They said, just a friendly warning, Black family, April 5, stay off the street. We are not protesting. The Latinos and white people that voted for Trump, the MAGA cult, it is their responsibility to protest against this regime. Do not give Trump the excuse to use the military against us or to declare martial law. A lot of Black people are saying that they don't want to give the Trump administration an excuse to do what they did to protesters in 2020 by violating First Amendment rights, by tear gassing peaceful protesters in the public space. There was a ton of violence had on peaceful Black protesters during the George Floyd protest in 2020. They don't want that to happen to them again. One Black person said, I will not be partaking in the Million Mayonnaise March. Well, those were just a few reasons why the Black community don't want to go to these protests on April 5th. They don't feel like it's their fight. They feel like they have fought for far too long and that they've been getting the short end of the stick when it comes to these movements, and they're not appreciated enough. Now, I'm not going to judge the Black community for this, although I do wish that they would come and oppose this administration. I wish they would come to the Million Mayonnaise March, whatever they're calling it. But I'm certainly not going to judge them for not doing it. It's their right. It's not my place to say whether the Black community should show up at these protests. If they feel like this is not their fight, then who am I to say that they're wrong? I think everyone should be going to these protests. I think everyone should be joining hands to oppose. But some people in the Black community are saying this is not the time for them to be doing that. And I'll just leave it at that. It's not my place to judge them. If that's where they feel they're at, then great. I totally support the Black community making whatever decision they feel like is necessary and best for them. And believe me, just because they're not going to show up on April 5th doesn't mean that they're not opposing already. They're loud and proud on social media. They're doing a ton of great advocacy work, especially a lot of the local grassroots organizations who are majority Black. But that's kind of where the Black community is. Again, I'm not the messenger for them. I'm just kind of relaying what I've heard. If you really, truly want to hear their perspective as to why they're not joining on April 5th, then I would recommend going and hearing them, going to their social media, to the people who are saying these things, and listen to them. Just listen. So those are some of the controversies that are happening around the April 5th protests. There's progressives in general. A lot of them are upset because they can't compartmentalize the two movements that are going on, the opposition side of things, and then the crafting a narrative around progressive policies. They want these liberals, these moderates, to be at these protests holding up signs that say Medicare for all. That's a little unrealistic. And in my opinion, I think we should compartmentalize the two movements, and that we should join hands in the opposition side of things, for sure. And then, of course, the Black community, like I just expressed, has their grievances with this April 5th protest. I already broke that down a little bit and gave my opinion. The reason I'm making this video, I guess I kind of buried the lead a little bit here. I'm going to the April 5th protests at the state capitol in Michigan, in Lansing, Michigan. I'll be there this Saturday. I'm gonna be seeing what the commotion's all about. I haven't been to one of these protests yet. It's gonna be a big protest at the state capitol. I expect thousands of people to be there, and hopefully I can talk to some people. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed anything that I said in this video, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, or more importantly, commenting on the videos. I enjoy when people are discussing the content of the video in the comments. That it makes me feel that what I'm talking about actually means something. Views, likes, they don't really matter. It's really the community, the engagement that's being crafted due to what I'm talking about. That's the important thing for me. But yeah, have a great night. Thank you.